We're currently all still riding that Captain Marvel hype train, as Brie Larson's character is taking the superhero movie world by storm in her Marvel Cinematic Universe debut. While the movie probably provided us with more questions than it did answers, one thing it did give us answers to was the Tesseract, namely its whereabouts for at least some of the time between Howard Stark retrieving it from the ocean and it being in Nick Fury's possession, as per the post-credits scene of 2011's Thor. In this video, we'll go into detail about that very subject.
I'm just supposed to take your word for that.
The Captain Marvel movie saw the introduction of several characters whose existence is incredibly important for the past, present, and future of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. First, of course, there's Captain Marvel herself, Earth's new and potentially last great hope against the Mad Titan Thanos. And the new movie marks the first time fans have had the privilege of seeing the MCU's new flagship superhero in action. Then there's the Skrulls and their shape-shifting abilities, which could completely change so much about the MCU as we know it, if it turns out that any of our favorite established characters have been aliens in disguise all along. And we met more members of the Kree, who we'd already been introduced to in Guardians of the Galaxy and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and it was revealed that many of them are warmongers and propagandists. So they could be more dangerous than we were initially led to believe. But it's possible that a character who seems to be in no position to shape the future of the MCU is the most intriguing of them all. A character who's already dramatically altered the franchise, having lived until she was killed in the crash that resulted in Carol Danvers gaining her powers. Scientist Wendy Lawson, aka the Kree scientist Mar-Vell, who was played by the absolutely wonderful four-time Academy Award nominee Annette Bening. Technically, Bening plays two characters, because she's also the avatar of the Kree's supreme intelligence in Carol Danvers' mind, due to the fact that the advanced AI takes the form of the person admired the most by whoever is using it. But it's Mar-Vell who's been the most impactful on the history of the MCU, having had a hand in recovering an Infinity Stone, inspiring Carol Danvers to be a superhero, and altering the future of S.H.I.E.L.D. as an organization. Moreover, her character, who was actually trying to help her species' arch-enemies, the Skrulls, find a new home. It turned out that the Skrulls were actually refugees in the MCU, and towards the end of Captain Marvel it became very apparent that they weren't the villains, and that the Kree were not the noble warriors they like to pretend they are. The truth had been obscured by Kree propaganda as a means of continuing and fueling their war against the Skrulls. When Mar-Vell found that out, she subsequently decided to help the Green Shapeshifters, an effort that hinged very much on her being able to harness the power of the Tesseract. The object that we already know from previous MCU movies was eventually revealed to be the Space Stone. But Mar-Vell was killed following a test flight crash, a flight Carol Danvers was also taking part in. But her death wouldn't be in vain, as it inspired Danvers to finish Mar-Vell's mission. Arguably the coolest thing about Mar-Vell was that both her and the movie's mid-1990s setting, an era we hadn't previously seen explored in the MCU, add new information to what we already knew about the Tesseract. Prior to the release of Captain Marvel, we'd seen the Space Infinity Stone on several occasions in the franchise. First, it appeared in the post-credits scene of 2011's Thor. Then it became a key plot point in 2011's Captain America: The First Avenger, which was actually set in the early 1940s. And it's since appeared prominently in 2012's The Avengers, 2017's Thor Ragnarok, and 2018's Avengers: Infinity War.
Oh, good. Yeah, come on. I think you're gonna like this.
In Captain America: The First Avenger, the Red Skull tracked the powerful item to Norway and stole it in the hope of harnessing its energy to win World War II. Cap thwarted the villain's plan. Red Skull was transported across the universe to Vormir by a wormhole the Tesseract created, and both Cap and the Tesseract plunged into the ocean. At the end of the movie, Howard Stark found the Tesseract, but didn't find Cap. In terms of the MCU's chronology, we know that Stark Sr. went on to study the Tesseract because we saw it in drawings shown in 2010's Iron Man 2. While that movie took place before the first official sighting of it in Thor's post-credits scene, and while it was released after we got its backstory in The First Avenger, it also happened some 6 decades after The First Avenger chronologically. Howard's drawings in Iron Man 2 seem to imply that his son's arc reactor, and indeed its various permutations, relied on Tesseract-based technology that had originally been discovered by Stark Sr. himself. However, we didn't actually know that when Iron Man 2 was released, and it wasn't until The First Avenger started to put the Tesseract's history together piece by piece that a clearer picture started to emerge. But as for the period of time in between, that's where we need Captain Marvel to start filling in at least some of the gaps. In the 2019 movie, we found out that the Tesseract was somehow in the possession of Annette Bening's Mar-Vell in 1989, when she died. That at least provides us with a little bit of previously unknown information regarding the whereabouts of the Tesseract before we saw Loki stealing it from the S.H.I.E.L.D. facility in the Avengers. Project Pegasus is extremely important in all of this, because in Iron Man 2 it was revealed that Howard was working on the project before he died in 1991, as confirmed when Tony opened a box of files with the project's name on it when he was trying to create his new element. And of course, Mar-Vell also worked with Project Pegasus. We saw the project in Captain Mar-Vell in its early form as a joint NASA-USAF initiative that S.H.I.E.L.D. had access to. And while we can't say for sure at this stage if Mar-Vell and Howard Stark interacted with each other before their deaths in 1989 and 91 respectively, and nor do we know exactly how long Mar-Vell researched the Tesseract for or when she took it to her secret lab in Earth's orbit, it appears as though the Infinity Stone was definitely moved around within Project Pegasus. In Captain Mar-Vell, Goose, the alien Flurkin who looks like a kitty cat, used his tentacles to pull the Tesseract into his mouth, which contains a pocket dimension for safekeeping. In the movie's post-credits scene, Goose coughed it up on Nick Fury's desk at an unspecified time, enabling Samuel L. Jackson's character to place it back into the possession of Project Pegasus, and conveniently tying it into that Thor post-credits scene from 2011, as well as 2012's Avengers movie and every other movie it appeared in going forward in the MCU. In that Thor scene, Fury asked Stellan Skarsgård's character Dr. Erik Selvig to research the Tesseract in one of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s secret underground labs. But unbeknownst to the then S.H.I.E.L.D. director, Loki was scheming in the shadows, plotting to get his hands on the Infinity Stone for his master, who we now know was Thanos. Then came the events of the Avengers, when it was revealed that the laboratory in question was called, you guessed it, Project Pegasus. In that movie, the operation had evolved to become a joint venture between NASA and S.H.I.E.L.D., which is slightly different from its original form in Captain Mar-Vell, when it was a joint venture between NASA and the US Air Force, but its primary purpose was still the studying of the Tesseract. Captain Mar-Vell then revealed that the Tesseract had been on its aforementioned detour in the 90s, as well as the fact that the Skrulls and the Kree were aware of its existence to some extent. Beyond that, Goose regurgitated it at an undefined point in the MCU's history, and the next time we saw it was when it resurfaced to become a key plot point in the Avengers. Earth's new ragtag band of mightiest heroes defeated Loki and his Chitauri army, resulting in the Tesseract and indeed Loki being transported to Asgard for safekeeping. And everything remained relatively calm on the Space Stone front until the events of 2017's Thor Ragnarok, when Loki couldn't resist saving it from Odin's trophy room before Asgard was destroyed. Then came 2018's Avengers Infinity War, when Thanos killed Loki, having taken the Tesseract from him, crushed it, and placed the stone inside of it into his gauntlet. The Mad Titan went on to assemble the full Infinity Gauntlet, snapped those fingers, and erased half of all life in the universe. An event that Carol Danvers will be told about in this year's Avengers Endgame. But Mar-Vell's links to Carol Danvers and the wider Marvel Universe aren't limited to those we've mentioned so far. In fact, the character is actually a huge part of Danvers' origin story in the comics, but with a major twist.
Whatever point is, things change.
When Danvers first appeared on panel in Marvel Superheroes number 13 back in 1968, Mar-Vell's alter ego was actually a dude. Rather than being Dr. Wendy Lawson, she was actually Dr. Walter Lawson, and Walter was Carol's love interest. But sadly back then, Danvers was often written as a hapless girlfriend, and even when she became a superhero in the 1970s, she would get a bad headache or faint as her superhero persona took over, leaving the actual Danvers with no recollection of her superhero exploits. The Marvel Cinematic Universe puts a new spin on the story by changing Walter to Wendy, but a lot of Danvers' origin details remain the same. The explosion of an alien device granting her superpowers, for example. Switching Mar-Vell to a female in the MCU also seems to be inspired by a character in Kelly Sue DeConnick's run on Captain Mar-Vell, the character of Helen Cobb. Cobb was a pilot who was hugely admired by Carol Danvers, in much the same way Brie Larson's Danvers admired Annette Bening's character. Cobb also flew jets, much to the disapproval of the Air Force bosses who usually didn't allow women to fly. Bening's character and Cobb also have a few similarities in their appearances, noticeably in the form of their short hair and their jackets. In Wendy Lawson, aka Mar-Vell, an amalgamation of the comic book characters Helen Cobb and Mar-Vell, we've been given a character that we never even knew existed in the MCU until recently, but who left an undeniable mark on the franchise, even though we'll probably never see her again. But who knows? Maybe we'll get lucky. As well as filling in some gaps in terms of the history of the Tesseract, she also inspired Carol Danvers to be the superhero she is today. And if that means she helps to save the entire universe from the persistent threat of Thanos in Avengers Endgame, her influence will continue to grow in the franchise going forward.
I like this one.
Did you enjoy this video? Do you think Captain Marvel seamlessly linked to the Tesseract to the likes of 2012's The Avengers? Where else do you think the Space Stone ended up after Howard Stark recovered it from the ocean? Let us know your thoughts, guys, and we'll see you next time.